Hi, and welcome to Filmmakers Compass Podcast, a show where we talk about movies and more movies. I'm D-Man, joined by CP. CP, how are you doing today?
Dude, I really love the Ninja Turtles.
Well, it looks like you've been in the movies quite a few times in the last week or two, right?
Of course.
How many times have you seen Mission Impossible?
I've now seen Mission Impossible 3 times.
Nice.
And I've seen Mutant Mayhem 2 times.
God, you love going to the theater. I mean, who doesn't? It's just so much fun. I love being there. I love the energy of the crowd, as long as there's not any crying babies or people bringing kids to Oppenheimer.
Yeah, dude, you had a bad run with people bringing little kids into Oppenheimer both times you went, huh?
Yeah, one of them was actually like a little kid, so they were probably like 2 or 3, and they were antsy. It's a talkie, I don't think that kid was necessarily into the film, and they were playing with toys in the front and doing all kinds of stuff, and it was pretty annoying. And then when you and I went, someone actually brought like a baby that started crying, and everybody was kind of like, "Ugh, how could you do this?" And like, I get it, having kids and trying to get to the movie theater is like extremely hard. But on one hand, I feel like I'm empathetic, to the kids, or sympathetic to the kids, but I'm empathetic to the parents because I understand that they want to go to the movies. But I mean, I feel like, I don't have kids, so maybe this is wrong, but if you do, and you're going to bring them to an adult movie like Oppenheimer, I think you're ruining it.
Well, I mean, I guess my perspective of it is this. Look, when you made the decision to have kids, you forfeited your right to go to movies, opening night.
Yeah, you got to leave the kids with grandma.
Movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a kid's movie, then that's on me for going to see a kid. Like, right, there were kids talking the whole time while I was in Ninja Turtles. And you know what? I add that to the energy side. They were really into it, and it was a lot of fun. I loved hearing the kids laugh and respond to the characters. I thought it was great. But yeah, when it's like Oppenheimer, I'm like, man. And yeah, I mean, I do feel I have to agree with you. I mean, you got to find, leave your kids with grandma or get a sitter, or, maybe you have like a big older sibling or something. But yeah, like if you have kids, don't ruin the movie. It's like that thing about texting at the beginning. And here's the other thing too, is like, Oppenheimer's rated R. How did these kids get in anyway? Kind of blame AMC a little bit for allowing it. Like, yeah, right. They should be like, you know what? This is an adult movie and kids just aren't allowed. And the parents are going to be like, whoa, that's not fair. You're like, yes, it is fair. No kids. Like, get them out of here.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. There's our rant, CP. We'll get to Star Wars later.
First of many.
But anyway, for anybody that's just listening and not watching, CP is rocking a TMNT Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles shirt with a Leonardo face. Kind of looks like Face from Nick Jr.
Well, I disagree with that. I mean, I think it looks like Leonardo. Face didn't really wear like a ninja band.
Like Face with like a ninja band would be your shirt.
Well, thank you for ruining this awesome Leonardo shirt that I was so excited to buy and then wear for this podcast. Thank you.
It does look amazing though. And I mean, it definitely sets the mood for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which we're going to talk about because I too saw TMNT Mutant Mayhem and I have my thoughts, but I am very excited. So CP, as always, we got to jump into our shout outs at the top of the show. So first up, and I'm going to let you explain this, but I have 2 shout outs and then explain. So the first comes from Jazzy, who said, RIP Ninja Turtles episode with sad face. And then she said, I liked it. And then Drucker actually tweeted at us and said, no episode this week. So what happened?
Well, so let's just put it this way. We suck a little bit. We ran into some technical issues and we did record an episode of the podcast last week. The audio was just a disaster, and we decided not to release it. But then we tried to release it anyway, and we're like, you know what? This just isn't up to your typical audio standards or the incredible standards of this podcast that we bring. So we pulled the episode. So some of you may have heard some of this conversation before, and some of you didn't. So let's just all pretend like we're hearing it now for the first time, since apparently no one could hear me talk anyway during the episode that was released.
Yeah, the levels were way off, and they were off to the degree of like you would literally need to turn your volume up and down depending on who's talking. And CP and I took a look at normalizing it in post and leveling it out, and we were unable to do it.
It's just going to take way too long to get it. in
Yeah,
any way
well,
where get out reasonably.
yeah, we just couldn't find a way to get it done where we were, confident in the quality. So we ended up like CP said, I put it out as kind of a like a lost episode, a little bit like, hey, it was out there. And then we ended up taking it down because we just weren't satisfied with the quality. So we will have some of those conversations, particularly about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles today. So we're going to talk about that. And we still have thoughts. But CP, that does not do it for our shout outs. We have more.
Yay! I
So,
was like, that's it. Only two people.
no, those are the two about the missing episode. So that's our excuse, and it's pretty lame. So here's to the new episode. First up is Ivor, who said, I'm in CP's corner about Barbie. Fun, but do not get the hype. Neither did my wife, and she loved Barbie. She had all of the Barbie accessories when she was younger. We just looked at each other with the what is all the hype about? So, CP?
Ivor, I
Thoughts?
love hearing that, man. First of all, I love anyone who agrees with me. You know that. But as I mentioned multiple times on the show, I just don't understand it. I got into a little bit of an argument with someone on social media after I posted my video about how I don't understand it. And they were very clear about the movie was so straightforward and what was wrong with me for just not getting it.
Yes, that was actually my next shout out was to carpe.lux.rowan on Instagram, who had a totally opposite take as Ivor and jumped in there and said, I can understand someone not liking it or disagreeing with it, but not getting it. Like it was confusing because I thought it was hit you over the head with a hammer, kind of clear message while having a very simple plot. And I kind of get what he's saying here, meaning when he's referring to getting it, it sounds like he's referencing the plot more
And the
maybe
theme
the
of the
theme.
film.
Yeah, like maybe the themes rather than you're referencing the hype, not getting the hype.
Yep.
So I feel like maybe you guys were on slightly different wavelengths here. And you did respond, of which he replied, what about it specifically seemed average? They definitely didn't use an average amount of pink paint. If it's average, to me, that means it's very much similar to most everything else out there, and I'm having trouble identifying how that might be. Again, I would expect a number of people to hate it, but I just can't see the averageness, if you will. So, and a CP, you did an excellent job of then steering this person to come listen to the show. So thank you so much.
That's what we do.
No, carpe.lux.rowan. Really appreciate your comment. And yeah, I think from my take on that comment, CP, was that yes, he's talking about the plot and the theme and the set design. And I think you were talking hype-wise about just why is it such a cultural phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I think that is exactly what Ivor was referring to. But on that note, then, to their points, I do want to say that I do kind of agree. The movie is certainly not average in the sense that it looks like everything else. It definitely has its own aesthetic. From what I understand, they actually built those sets and had a lot of fun with the wardrobe and all that because they got to go back through the Barbie doll line and all this stuff. So I thought all that stuff was great. I mean, it was pretty cool. I mean, the Barbie dream house, I never had one,
That
but I
wasn't
have a sister.
a Christmas toy that you wanted one year.
It wasn't. Mine was the Millennium Falcon. There's that Star Wars reference, CP. Mine was the Millennium Falcon. Yeah, big Star Wars guy. But my sister had one. So we did have one, right? Like I know what the Barbie dream house is. And so, I mean, it was kind of cool to see it, brought to life in a, kind of real world Barbie land scenario.
Yeah.
So next up on our shout outs, CP, Connor Geary wanted to give you a shout out and say, it was great to see you on a movie set, man. I saw your posts on social media. I saw you were PAing and you're an associate producer on a short film, and just wanted to say that is awesome. It's always exciting for us to see people just, living out their passion and, really just being on set because it's so much fun. So CP, we'll have to tell stories about our life on set sometime, because we do have some stories. Like, remember when I ended up getting sick and I was like holding a boom mic and literally like dying?
Remember in film school, this is my favorite. Remember in film school where we had a bunch of people meet up for a film we were shooting, and we met in a parking lot. We said, okay, everyone, we're actually going to go around. You go just 3 blocks over, and we're going to that parking lot right across that field that you can see. And everybody showed up there except for one of the main actors, and he just never arrived, and we just made a movie without him. He's
Like,
still
what happened
driving
to this guy?
around looking for that parking lot in North San Diego somewhere.
Oh man, yeah, being on set is so much fun. We'll have to tell some stories from set sometime, CP, that because that's some good stuff. Next up, Drucker actually chimed in and said Cillian Murphy and Christopher Nolan could this is not happening yet, join together for a James Bond film. So CP, what do you think? Cillian Murphy and Christopher Nolan, really just Christopher Nolan doing Bond. I mean, what do you think about that?
I mean, Christopher Nolan has earned the right to make any movie he wants with any franchise he wants. He has shown us that he can do the big blockbuster Hollywood popular flick. He can also do the much more intellectual, independent style movies. He can really do it all. He's one of the few filmmakers who's been successful in every genre he has dipped his feet into. So, hey man, go for it. I don't know if Cillian Murphy is the Bond character, but I think he would be a great addition to Bond in
Yeah,
whatever
I
role
would.
he wanted to, because he's an incredible actor as well.
Yeah, I would be down. I think you nailed it on the head, which is that Christopher Nolan has explored many different genres now: comic book, biopic, obviously sci-fi, and many different things. And I think, yeah, if he wanted to take on anything, I'd be down. If he wanted to do a Star Wars movie, I'd be down for it.
Yeah, right.
So
He's one of the few people who has earned, like, whatever you want to try, man, we're gonna trust you.
in that same thread, at Sean Cake, Sean Gaston mentions that there was a Wes Anderson LOTR YouTube trailer, which I don't know if you had a chance to check that out, but I actually watched it. Sean linked to it, I think. And it was fantastic, which again, this is a guy that maybe has his own, he's an auteur, he has his own style. And then you apply that to something like Lord of the Rings. And that trailer turned out great. I would totally watch that movie.
I thought it was hilarious. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Sean, for sharing it. And it brings up the fact that I don't know if you saw this, but similarly, there is a trailer floating around where if Guy Ritchie made Harry Potter. And it's so like Guy Ritchie
Yeah. All right.
stylized. I love it.
I gotta check it out because yeah, the Wes
Yeah.
Anderson LOTR has like Bill Murray as Gandalf. I think at the very end it says like and Sauron voiced by Owen Wilson, and you're like it would be like
Yeah,
that's
right.
exactly on point. So I did want to mention or shout out my coworker because I had the chance to go see Across the Spider-Verse. And I texted her and let her know that I finally got to see it because she loved it. And she said, it is so good. The soundtrack stays on repeat. I legit want to see it again, honestly. So I agree with you. I really enjoyed the movie. I mean, I thought the visuals are fantastic. It expands on the, kind of comic book style that was introduced in the first one. This movie, I think, has even more of a slightly powerful story that's a little bit more unique. It's different than any Spider-Man we've ever seen. My only thing that would be a slight criticism is maybe some of the chase scenes went on a little bit long. I don't know. You saw it, CP. And some of them I felt like
Yeah.
just a smidge because, with chase scenes, when you kind of have a predetermined outcome, right? Like they're chasing Spider-Man. I mean, he's not going to die. He's either going to get captured or get away. So,
Yeah.
it's not, there's not a lot of suspense as to like what will actually happen. You're like, we know what's going to happen. So you just draw it out too long. Maybe like my description of that. So, and then finally, we have a shout out to Sam Vargas, who CP, in reference to you going to see movies, said, "Is that your job? You are blessed." So,
well, thank you, Sam. I am blessed.
yeah, CP
Mostly to
gets
have
to
a
go to the
friend
movies
like
all the
Sam.
time. Well, I do want to say, though, thank you to everybody for all of your comments and continued conversation on the movies. This is fantastic. This is what we love, is to keep that conversation going and really kind of talk to you guys about what worked, what didn't, what you like, what we liked, and it's fun. So thank you. That was quite a bit of shout outs this week, CP. So that was awesome. Do you have any?
Just to Seth Rogen, thank you for making an awesome Ninja Turtle movie. I always appreciate it, man. When people do stuff
Fantastic.
right.
I have to agree. Well, that actually leads us into our first topic this week, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. So we have a few things to talk about when it comes to the Turtles overall. But before we jump into that, CP, I'm going to throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on Mutant Mayhem?
Oh, dude, I loved it. And I think the thing that I loved about it is it was true to the spirit of the Ninja Turtles. And kind of no matter at what point you got on, whether you were one of the first people reading the Ninja Turtle comics back in the early 80s, or you got in with the late 80s, early 90s animated series, or the early 2000s animated series, or one of the different movies, whatever point you kind of jumped in, this movie is very true to the spirit as to who the Ninja Turtles are. The second thing I really loved about it is I feel like there's a tendency within the Ninja Turtle storyline to keep retreading the same ground, which is turtles show up in New York, turtles fight Shredder. Like, this was slightly different. I liked that it was looking at a different element of the characters, their relationship, and we did not have Shredder as the big bad in this movie. And I thought that all of that worked really well.
I do want to say to your first point about where you came in liking Ninja Turtles, I will point out that I came in liking the 1987 cartoon. And I actually had access to that cartoon because you could go through the Burger King drive-through back then and you could buy a copy of the first 5 episodes.
Nice.
So I owned it on VHS. I had them and I loved that cartoon. And so I was a huge fan then when I got a chance to see the live action movie, because obviously I had, 87, I was just born, and 90, I was 3. So, but at that time, Turtle Mania was at its zenith. I grew up with I had the toys. I remember I had the sewer layer, and I ruined it with some slime because apparently the slime dries if you don't
clean it up.
Yeah, clean it up. You just leave it on there and then you come back and it like cracked the plastic because it dried. Yeah, I ruined it. So anyway, yeah, I mean, for me coming in on the first live action movie in the 1987 cartoon, that is the zenith of Turtle Mania. And I have to agree here. In this instance, they did a good job of really capturing the spirit of the Ninja Turtles. And in particular, I really liked that in this incarnation, they made the Turtles feel like teenagers. I think that was something that really stood out to me because a lot of the incarnations we've seen, particularly the live action ones, are when they feel more like adults. And I think that's just because there's literally adults in the suits playing the Ninja Turtles. And then in the Michael Bay versions, they're just massive. And so they don't always, I guess, feel like teenagers. And in this one, not only did the voice actors do a good job with their banter and back and forth, but the voice actors themselves are teenagers. So I thought it worked really, really well. Now, I understand the hesitancy to want to use teenagers in that role because to bring them back, if they go through puberty, their voices might change, and that can be a bit of an issue. So I know why in any other animated versions, you may go with the adults, but in this case, they gambled, and I think it worked. I really liked that aspect of it. And then for me, the other thing that really stood out was the animation style. So the animation style in this case, it feels very drawn, like hand drawn, or almost like at times like brushed or watercolored. Very kind of heavy lines, different colors to exaggerate where things are. But even more than that, I thought it was really fun how whenever there's any sort of like action, like an explosion or smoke out of the tailpipe of a car or anything, it tends to get more and more hand drawn. You start to see scribbles and different things that you might see maybe in some comics or whatever. But the reason I really love the animation style in this instance is I really think it fits the Turtles. They're teenagers. And this feels like something that like I would draw in a notebook and then slide it over to you in class when we were in middle school or high school, CP. Like that's how it feels to me. Like very much assembled by people who just were having fun and, passing the notebook around. And I think it works really well.
Well, the other thing that I think is great about the animation style, and I will tell you, the first time I saw the movie, I saw it in 3D. The second time I saw it in 2D. And what I think works really well with the animation style, it is new and unique. Obviously, we talked about the Turtles have been rebooted multiple times. For a year in like 1997, there was a really crappy live action turtle in suits television series. Each version,
the female one, is that series?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my god.
Each version of the show has been distinctly different. The animation has changed within the animation series. I mean, the original comic book was a black and white comic book, and within the films, we've had live action. The turtle puppet suits. We've had CG the whole movie. We've had CG turtles with real people. We've now had animated turtles. And I think what's great about this is they are kind of bridging all these different styles of medium that we've explored the turtles before, but presenting in a way that's totally unique and original. It doesn't feel like a rehash of the original Ninja Turtles 1987 series. It doesn't feel like a rehash of the 2003 series. It doesn't even feel like a rehash of the 2014 one. It's its own unique visual style. And I think that that adds more credibility to why are we telling this story now? Because it looks different. It's not like one of the ones that we've had before.
So I did have one question for you, CP, and this is in reference to some criticism that I've seen online. So there is a scene in the origin story of the Turtles in which the way they learn ninjutsu or karate or anything in this instance of the Turtles, instead of taking training from
Master
their
Yoshi.
former Master Yoshi, or I think the live action one, like technically Splinter's a rat the whole time and he watches him and learns and then passes that on to the Turtles. In this instance, they learn that from movies. How did you feel about that? Because I know some people online were critical of that in the sense that it didn't feel like then that the Turtles were actually ninjas, but just kind of like, imitators,
Wannabe ninjas.
posers.
Well,
what did you think? Because I didn't mind it.
I guess my response would be this: Splitter is voiced by Jackie Chan. So if anyone is going to be teaching you martial arts, however he comes about them, I think Jackie Chan is more than credible as an instructor. So whether it's Jackie Chan Rat or Jackie Chan the man, he knows what he's doing. So we'll just leave it at that.
All right, we'll leave that there. I do have one sort of personal criticism for the movie, and that is that I did feel the villain, Superfly, was a little stock. He kind of is a misunderstood villain or he's just a misunderstood character because he's a mutant and he feels like he's not accepted by humans, and therefore he decides that he wants to take revenge and kill all the humans and turn all the animals into mutants, and then he can be their leader and rule the world. And even though that took more than 2 seconds to actually explain, it just didn't feel like there was much depth to the actual character. It just felt like rule the world.
Especially when you compare it to someone like the original 1990s Shredder, who is a great villain.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example where I think if you look at that, he's banished from Japan for betraying his master. He ends up starting a kind of a crime ring in New York City in order to kind of build back his Foot Clan. Mm-hmm. And he captures the souls of lost youths in New York City and kind of creates this fake family-esque thing. And that's how he sort of builds his empire. And his connection to the Turtles is through Splinter, like before. But more than that, it's actually because the Turtles saved April O'Neil, who's reporting on their crime ring. And they're at odds simply. So without Splinter, I mean, him and the Turtles would have come face to face no matter what. And then when you add the Splinter backstory into it, they have a more personal connection. But I just really liked that version of a villain. Plus, I thought the way they did the costume design for Shredder in that movie, and even some of the shots of him when he's speaking to his family, were quite impressive. And he was very scary. I was scared of him.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I would have been like
shadows. I love that shot where he walks in and he's silhouetted against, and you see the long shadow and it goes into who the Shredder is. His power is constantly portrayed. People are removing his cape for him. People are always serving him. He is like the Ninja Turtle version of the Darth Vader, which is who the guy should be.
Yeah, I thought they did that really, really well. And again, I mentioned in 87, I was born, and in 90, I was 3. So I probably saw this when I was like 4 or 5. And yeah, he was very scary as a kid. And, what can you do after you're already scared by it? It's hard to become an adult and not be scared by it. So there's still that. But did you have any criticisms, or did anything stand out to you as something that maybe if it seems like we're going to get a sequel, they could do better next time?
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Superfly was stock, but as I said, I liked the decision to take him in a different direction. I also thought it was cool that they were taking, my understanding is Superfly and his compadres were actually from the action figure line in the early 90s, and not from original source material in the show or the comic book line, which I thought was cool. Taking some of the expanded Ninja Turtles universe and making it canon.
Yeah, I thought that was really neat. And I will give a tip of the cap. It did seem like Superfly is kind of following the Marvel formula of the mirror villain, where in this instance, because of Master Splinter's experience in New York City of being, rejected both as a rat and a mutant, he does not want the turtles to, literally let everyone know that they even exist, right? They're supposed to hide in the shadows and all of that stuff, like normal. But, he is sort of a mirror villain for the turtles in that they both want to be accepted, but they go about it in totally different ways. The turtles decide that in order to be accepted, they need to become heroes, and that way they can step into the light. And instead of him wanting to be accepted anymore, he totally rejects humanity and decides to destroy them all. So it leads to a good story, follows that Marvel formula, but maybe is a little bit tired. We've seen that many, many times.
So two quick questions for you about the actual film. I want to get your take on. First one, what did you think about the decision to insert live action movie clips into the animated film?
I liked it. I mean, I thought it was something that isn't long overdue in animation or anything. It just felt free. In this case, I think it goes along with the animation style in that it just felt like if we want to do it, that's how we'll do it. Right. Like if you were going to slide the notebook over with, your new panel and you include your phone on top of it with a YouTube video, like that's how it feels to me, is just kind of like, okay, why not? And we're already sort of breaking rules and doing new things. So just have fun with it. So that's
I would agree. Second question, what did you think about the soundtrack?
I actually really like that. Now, Seth Rogen in, is it Adam Goldberg, I think? Is that?
Yeah.
They're known in their movies for that kind of nostalgic late 80s, early 90s soundtrack. And you see that in a lot of Apatow films, Knocked Up, Superbad, some of these movies. So anyway, I think it was, what is the other one? This Is the End. They literally, they have some of these songs in Ninja Turtles in This Is the End. So I know that these guys love those songs, but I thought it was great. It was something that the Ninja Turtles are not known for other than, Vanilla Ice. So
yes,
they're not known for their music. And in this case, I think it may have been a slight homage to the time of the creation of the Turtles, or Turtle Mania. A little throwback to that era. So I thought it worked.
No, I thought it was great. I thought it was a good way of connecting, again, in line with the spirit of who the Turtles are. This was tying us back to the 80s, early 90s when the Turtles burst on the scene. And this was the music at the time. I thought it was a good way of tying it together for fans who've been there from the beginning and people who are just getting in now.
I mean, can we acknowledge that I can't name all of the, homages, but I felt like they were paying compliments to the different iterations of the Turtles through the years. Like if you look on their belt buckles, they still have their first initial. Obviously, there were mentions of Laird and Eastman. I think at one point they have the Turtles show up where they only have white eyes. It's kind of like their imagination of themselves, how they think they would look. I think the Turtles, when they're they reference something, and I think it was a direct, I can't remember exactly what it was, but there's a reference to the first movie, and then there's like TCRI and all this stuff. They really leaned into, let's make this a great amalgam of everything TMNT.
No, I totally agree. So an amalgamation of everything that's TMNT, that kind of brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. There was a great article, or a terrible article, we're going to talk about it, within the Hollywood Reporter last week, where they went through and ranked every Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie.
Okay.
Once Mutant Mayhem had been released. So let's start there. I want to go through and talk about this with you and our audience and see what we agree with and what we disagree with. So 7 Ninja Turtle movies. This goes through all of them, the animated and the live action.
Okay.
So number 7, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 from 1993.
Totally appropriate.
I actually think I would probably agree. Audience, if you remember, this is the one where the Turtles go back to feudal Japan. But I think the biggest changes, aside from the story just being not up to par with the original live action Ninja Turtles movie, they actually changed the costume work and went with a different studio, and it doesn't feel like the Turtles that we know.
Yeah, I have to agree. I remember being excited at the time that Casey Jones was coming back, and he really just got sidelined for a comedic bit with uh, the Japanese characters who came back, who like swapped places with the turtles, basically. And
Yeah, I
so they're
agree.
stuck in the sewers in New York, and he's just kind of like, I
Babysitting.
don't know, yeah, babysitting. And I don't know. I thought Casey Jones might have a bigger role, so that was a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, not a fan. It also has a it feels very long for a kids movie.
Yeah, and then they're leaning more. I think as you go from the first nine, the original live action, to the second one, Secret of the Ooze, to the third, they get sillier and sillier.
Mm-hmm.
Like they take themselves less and less seriously, and to that end, it just doesn't feel like its story is one that you need to retell or see
Yeah,
again.
no, I agree. So number 6 on the list, TMNT 2017. That is the CG 100% animated Ninja Turtles movie.
2017.
Yes, or I'm sorry, 2007. My bad.
Okay, yeah, I was
I don't
like,
know how to read.
I liked this one. It was fun. I thought it definitely updated the animation style, and they did some stuff, but where it's at on the list, 6 out of 7, I might rank that a little bit higher.
I think I would move that up to something probably in the 4 or 5 range. I like it. I think it is a little bit darker look at the turtle lore. It is weird in the sense that it's the turtle movie that pretty much is the story of Raphael and his relationship with his friend Casey Jones, more
Hmm.
than a movie about the rest
Yeah.
of the turtles. So I guess if you're a hardcore Michelangelo fan, you might find that offensive.
Ooh, I am. Party guy.
Number 5, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze from 1991.
Too low. That's too low. Now, granted, I have rewatched Secret of the Ooze, and I think maybe it's one of those instances of, rose tinted glasses. When you're a kid and you watch Secret of the Ooze, it was probably your favorite one. And rightfully so. I remember loving it as a kid, but watching it as an adult, I don't know that it was my favorite, but I also don't hate it. And so I don't know, 5 feels low. I mean, we're talking, there's some Michael Bay movies in here above that. I don't agree with that.
I agree with you. I think it is too low. My biggest gripe with Secret of the Ooze is honestly the fact that, as Michelangelo says, we get the Super Shredder, and the turtles don't even fight him.
Yeah, the doc literally just collapses under his own weight of becoming the super shredder, and he's like,
Yeah. So
then his hand finally falls. He's
yeah, I
dead.
found that kind of disappointing, and I think from a story perspective, it's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, but we did get the ninja rap.
I
And then
know.
what's the other guys?
The pizza guy.
Yeah, what's his name? Ken or Kino?
Yep.
It's Kino. I mean, we
Yeah.
get Kino. He was kind of cool. And then there is a new April O'Neil, which I didn't know this. I just assumed that maybe there was a conflict or a scheduling conflict or something. Why the April O'Neil from the original live action didn't go to the second one, but it ends up apparently she gave some interviews where she criticized her working relationship with the director and some of the producers and her experience on the movie, and they actually just recast her. They didn't.
They're like, see ya. We'll move
Yeah,
on.
you're gone. I was like, damn, that's harsh. I really liked her as April O'Neil, so kind of a bummer.
All right. So number 4, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 2014. This is the first of the Michael Bay films.
I actually have a question for you about that. Did Michael Bay direct this movie?
I don't actually think he did. I think we call them the Michael Bay films because he produced them, he created them, and he was the person who I blame for ruining my life back in 2014. So
Well, yeah, they're always referred to as the Michael Bay ones, but I was like, did he actually direct them or was he just producing?
well, I mean, it's kind of
Curious.
like with the Transformers films. We blame him for all of those, and he only made like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, right. And that is a massive franchise now. So there's been a lot of people directing Transformers movies. And I have to agree with you here, CP. I feel like these movies. So there's 2 things I have to say about this spot on the list. First of all, I would put Secret of the Ooze over this movie. Although I didn't hate this movie. I liked one that they experimented with the look and feel of the turtles a little bit. You know, it can get kind of stale if they just look the same every time. So even though it was heavily, heavily criticized when the first trailer came out that the turtles looked weird and they don't look right and they look stupid, I do applaud them for experimenting with that, you know, and making them kind of big sort of monsters because they are mutants, right? Like, you know, maybe they're not, you know, plush friendly, you know, maybe they really do look kind of horrifying. And if they were to step out of the light, like you wouldn't be like, oh, hey, what's up? You'd be like, ah, that scary turtle, you know. So there was something to that I thought really worked. The other thing that I have to acknowledge here, and this is about it being ranked at 4, is how in the hell is the sequel ranked higher?
That well, let's go right into that because the very next one on the list is number 3, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows from 2016, and that's the sequel that you're talking about.
I just that at 3, I don't see it.
Well, the only thing that I will give I will give 3 or the sequel Out of the Shadows 2 points over the first one. I think the first one tried to walk a line of almost trying to make it be slightly believable, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And when we got to the sequel, they're like, you know what? We're just going to lean into fun and just try to have fun. They also balanced out the turtles. If you remember, Raph was like a giant in the first one.
Yeah.
And they kind of shrunk him down back in size with the rest of the turtles. But I think the only thing that I really give this movie as a strength is the introduction of the Casey Jones character.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. I do think that was pretty cool. Like I said, I did like the size of the turtles. I found it interesting. I think in the first one at number 4, they have a scene where they're like falling down a cliff with some Jeeps and like they can literally use their shells to like block cars and do stuff. I was like, I don't know. It kind of gave it it let the turtles do different things. I thought that was pretty cool. You know, I will say though, I did not like the Shredder in the 2014 one.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I like him in the original. So
and I'm with you. And I still think that Out of the Shadows should be ranked below the 2014 one. And I think both of those should be ranked below Secrets of the Ooze and the original TMNT and the animated TMNT movie. So
that's fair. I could see that.
This is really the list. And I think that this is what the question that I come to is. The number 2 on this list is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990s.
Ah, see, that would be my number 1.
I agree.
That's my favorite. Hands down, that's my favorite. And I loved Mutant Mayhem. But there's something just that works so well for me in the original live action version that it always brings me back to this point, which we talked about way long ago on our Total Rewind episode, which is this movie had no business working. Yeah. When you think about like mutant turtles in New York City and these guys in costumes doing ninja moves and all this stuff, you're like, this sounds ridiculous. And there's just no way this will work. And somehow they pulled it off with a darker tone. Mm-hmm. I thought with a great villain, they really turned Shredder into somebody that I was interested in. I liked that if you actually look at this movie compared to almost any of the other Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies, they give the turtles some moments of like quiet or silence.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you think like
to add levity to the situations. Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, they're very, very sad when they learn that Splinter has been captured, potentially dead. Mm-hmm. You know, I think they have that scene where they all sit around the bonfire while they're on the farm. April O'Neil draws those photos of the turtles. There's some real, like you said, levity in this movie. And I thought I also really liked the way New York looked. You know, kind of 80s Fear City, you know, real grimy, dark, pre-Giuliani, you know, like a city that would need the turtles. Like when you look at the crime ring that Shredder's running and what's being reported on the Channel 5 news, like, the New York City needed the turtles in this incarnation and they showed up and delivered. Love it.
Well, if you're paying attention to this audience, then you know what number 1 is, and that is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem from 2023. And why I really like this movie, I agree, this is not the best, you know, turtle movie. I think it should be down to 2.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say is, I mean, at worst, I'm just flipping those two. I'm not saying that like this ranked at 1 is egregious and it needs to be dropped down to 5 out of 7. I'm like, honestly, I would just probably flip the top two. I really liked Mutant Mayhem. It was cool. In the trailer, you can see that, Superfly turns into a giant kaiju and he attacks New York City. And, obviously we've never seen anything like that before. So, we have in the cartoon, but not in a live action movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was pretty fun. That was neat. And because isn't it in the 87 cartoon, doesn't like Krang turn into like a
grow? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So anyway, in the movies. And I thought there was just so much here to like. I thought everything worked for me. I know some people were critical, CP, about the character design of April O'Neil in this. Did you find anything to be critical of?
No, I mean, I think the biggest difference is in all the other turtle movies, April O'Neil is a grown up. She's a professional television reporter. In this one, she's a high school kid, the same age as the turtles. And I think, again, that's changing the dynamics and the turtles' interaction with the characters that they interact with in a more meaningful way for me.
Yeah, I mean, her mission really is to save her prom.
Mm-hmm.
And, she works for the school newspaper. She's kind of a up and coming reporter who hasn't really had any success at all at school. She's made fun of for being a reporter. So, but I thought the character design wise, I mean, they kept her in yellow. They kept her a reporter. They kept certain elements. Obviously, she still fits right in with the turtles the way she normally would. But like you said, she's not an adult in this world that's able to get them in and out of certain places. Like, I think they even remark on that in the 87 cartoon that they're like, oh, April can get us in, like she could get them certain places. And in this instance, I don't know if that's true, but I didn't really have a problem with it. I thought it was good.
No, and I think it goes back to what you initially said, which is this is the story of them as teenagers where they're discovering their ninja abilities. This is the beginning of the first time they step out of the shadows. And I think it worked setting her as a teenager like them who could be the foil. What's it like to be living in a world where you can walk around not in the shadows but still not be seen?
Nice. Yeah, really enjoyed it. So yeah, those would be 1 and 2. I would probably do live action 1, Mutant Mayhem 2, Secret of the Ooze 3, the 2014 TMNT 4, the animated one 5, the live action sequel 6, and then rightfully so, TMNT 3, Japan at last. I actually liked that movie as a kid, which is wild. Like, I really enjoyed it. I had it on VHS and I watched it all the time. I've probably seen it more times than is respectable. But I mean, it's just, it doesn't hold up. It's not actually like a great movie in disguise, which is the irony considering the turtles were wearing disguises the whole time.
Very true. All right. So the other thing I wanted to talk about with you is now, and we'll be fully transparent, audience. We're recording this over the weekend, so we don't know the extent of the box office success, but there was a great article that dropped on Saturday morning about the movie released Friday, The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Now, have you seen the trailer for this, D-Man? Is this something you're going to check out?
I have. Dracula on a ship. That's what I took away from it.
Yeah. And I personally, based on the trailer, I actually thought it was interesting. I have my ticket bought. I'm going to go see it tonight. So
can I just comment on something really quick?
Go ahead.
I do not like that title.
Well, it seems weird if you're making a movie about Dracula. Why not use that iconic character in the title?
It just doesn't convey anything to me other than like there's a voyage.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't, to me, it just does not capture. When you see the trailer, I just don't associate those two things together. It feels like a misfire.
Well, I don't think that that's the only misfire going on here. And that's what I wanted to talk about with you and the audience. So Deadline has a great article where during the Friday premiere, this film only made $6.5 million. And Deadline's already flagging it as a bomb for Universal and Amblin, who created this. And their argument is the fact that It was made for about $45 million, and it's not
Oh,
going to
not
break
bad.
even. So what's the business? Their argument in this is really pointing to the fact that this is a missed opportunity by creating this film as a period horror film.
Okay.
The author goes on to point to a couple other examples of period horror films that really just ended up not being successful. You know, Crimson Peak from 2015, the Guillermo del Toro movie, a few
Hmm.
other ones. But when I look at this as an audience member, I think that the failure isn't so much that it is a period horror piece. I feel like the failure is, when was this movie released? So that's what I wanted to talk about with you. Why are they dropping this movie in the middle of the summer blockbuster season instead of waiting 2 months and dropping it for Halloween?
So first of all, I do agree with you. Even if you just were picking a date for this movie and you're like, we're gonna do it in summer. I mean, 2 weeks after Barbenheimer seems like a bad idea. I mean, only really a brand as Teflon as maybe the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles can get away with that. But most things aren't. You're going to get overwhelmed by,
Mm-hmm.
Oppenheimer and Barbie. So even just picking the date is off a little bit to me. I think you're just going to have a tough box office almost no matter what you are. But I do agree with you. If you're picking the season for this movie, it seems like it would be much more at home around Halloween.
Or you could drop it in that kind of January, February, where studios sort of dump all the horror films because there's nothing else going on the box office. You know, you can make them on the cheap, get them out there, and hopefully make some return.
Yeah, and this, I mean, just from the trailer alone, this definitely seems like a movie that might have a better box office run around like the Halloween time. Because I feel like people are into the scares. It's not necessarily horror movies, but they're just into that vibe, and I don't know. It's like people aren't in the mood in the summer to go to a movie like that, maybe. You're going to have some people, it made some money, but I mean, just general audiences aren't like, oh, I feel like going to see something scary.
When we take a look at some of the other movies that have come out this year, this is not the first example of this. If you remember, in April, Universal released Renfield, another movie about Dracula, without Dracula in the title, and it made $26 million worldwide against a budget of close to 70. So, yes, that was a failure, but I think part of that failure is, why are you putting out this kind of dark horror comedy in April?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they were thinking that's the one with Nick Cage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they're thinking Nick Cage had a bit of a career resurgence, the last year and a half. So maybe they were hoping that his star power would lift that movie, but it clearly didn't. I also think, it is Nick Cage. It looks like he was having fun. So I'll probably actually check that movie out. But he's also not Nick Cage. Like, part of the Nick Cage resurgence was him sort of being Nick Cage.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so then you take him out of that and you're like, all right.
No, I would agree. You saw one of the movies, Haunted Mansion, came out 2 weeks ago, made $65 million, which is respectable, I guess, but for what Disney spent, not on par. And the bigger issue is, again, why not drop the Haunted Mansion in October as the family friendly alternative to all the horror movies that are coming out in that month anyway?
You are absolutely correct on this one. When we left the theater, we went and saw it with some friends. That was actually tossed around casually, not as a critical podcast, oh, what were they thinking? This was literally tossed around by people that just went to go see it for fun. They were like, oh, that was really good. Like, I enjoyed it. It's a cool family movie. But they're like, why did they not release this around Halloween? And I have to agree. Seeing the movie, it definitely has a Halloween vibe. It seems like it would actually separate itself from the horror genre in that the Haunted Mansion is much more family fare, family fun, and it would definitely get you in the spirit for the holiday. So I too found this odd that they're releasing it July 26th, and again, right the week after Barbenheimer. I just do not get that. You knew it was going to go up against these two, and that's crazy. Like, It just seems like a miss all around.
Now, we've seen success with dropping horror films in the summer months. And I think, the best example of it's probably the two It movies, which came at the end of the summer box office season, made around $1.5 billion in the box office. Obviously, it was successful, but they turned that truly into a franchise. And those were presented as blockbuster films, right? Part one and part two, going off of an incredibly popular book. There was already a movie that people loved. They changed the tone and made it much more of a blockbuster. But I don't see that happening with any of these recent horror releases. They're not presented as blockbuster movies. So the last thing I want to draw attention to is based on what the author says with period horror movies being a failure. I don't think that's the case, because one of the examples that the author points to is Guillermo del Toro's Nightmare Alley from 2021, which had an insignificant impact on the box office. But that movie dropped on December 17th, 2021. And I just don't think anyone wants to see some gothic horror Guillermo del Toro movie right during the middle of the Christmas season.
Yeah, again, I agree with you. I think, yes, all those movies have an audience. There's just like people are going to go see that movie, but are you going to expect kind of a cultural moment? Are you going to expect the casual moviegoer to pick that? Because that's really where, right, the people that are going to go see it are going to go. The question is, when people look up what movie do you want to see, is that what they're going to choose? It's not. I have to agree. It's just not. It's not what I'm in the mood for. Like, is there a Christmas movie out? Is there anything that's maybe a comedy, something a little more lighthearted? You got to kind of read the room. And at the holiday season, like, that's just not what I'm in the mood for. And that, I think, is who you're trying to capture, is anybody that was like, oh, what do I want to watch? Because how often does that happen, right? Your friends or your wife, or you're going to try to go on a date and you're like, oh, okay, cool. You want to go to the movies? Well, what do you want to see? Now, people are going to have their minds made up about a couple things, but it's when you scan through that list and there's those movies that you're like, no, I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
That's when you lost the box office.
No, I agree. And the last two examples I want to point to for the period horror films working are, I don't know if you ever saw this, The Witch from 2015. One of the greatest horror movies made in the last 20 years, hands down. And it was released in February during the horror movie dump. It was made for $4 million and ended up making close to $50 million. Period horror movie set in, Puritan New England. And the other one would be Dracula Untold from 2014. Made for 70 on the upper end, but it made $214 million in the box office.
That's really good. Yeah.
And what was the day it came out as this period horror gothic?
I don't know.
October 10th.
Right in time for Halloween. Everybody's in the mood.
Right? And so I just don't understand why studios don't seem to understand the art of scheduling some of these films.
Well, I think two things stand out in my mind, at least for conversation's sake, which is if they make a horror movie or a Halloween themed movie and they're looking at the lineup that's already booked during that period, they may be saying that if we release our movie during this time, we might get kind of washed out as just another horror movie, and it might not be as successful. And then, like you said, there is sort of a movie dump in January, February, if you're not, nominated for Oscars and getting a re-release. They just release some of these movies. I think the fall can also be perceived that way, where it's like the summer blockbusters over, kind of the biggest movies of the year are done. And so if you release during this period, there's maybe both internally in Hollywood, the producers and stuff see it this way, and maybe the audience is trained because of Hollywood, that they're like, these movies are, lesser. You know what I mean? Like maybe they're not, like, if it couldn't be released in the summer, then it probably wasn't that good.
Fair enough.
And so I don't know, maybe there's those things holding people back from releasing it. But I mean, releasing The Haunted Mansion after Barbie and Oppenheimer, that just seems dumb.
Yeah.
because I'm not gonna lie, if Disney's rebooting the Haunted Mansion, they already made one with Eddie Murphy back in the day. My guess is that they're hoping that the Haunted Mansion as a franchise can be on the same level as Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just, I'm like, you guys just did not set it up for the success. I think you should have made it almost like a Halloween tradition. Like you should be putting out Haunted Mansion movies around Halloween, and then people are like, "Oh yeah, I love that." It's like part of my Halloween.
Get into the spirit, of the season. Yeah.
And who knows? Then you could even get creative with it and do like a Haunted Mansion at Christmas, and then you could release one at that time one year, and like I don't know, you could do all kinds of fun stuff.
You're right. I don't understand it. So, audience,
Disney, give me a call.
Let us know your thoughts on this. Are we right? Are we wrong? And let us know if you're going to go see the Last Voyage of the Demeter. Because as I said, I'm intrigued. I think the trailer looks interesting. It sounds like it didn't resonate with you, D-Man, and part of it is the missed opportunity on naming and the poor release window. So, audience, let us know what you're thinking here.
Awesome. Well, CP, that actually takes us into our final topic this week, and something that I'm excited to talk about is it is back to school season.
Yeah.
So not for us. I mean, not for us, CP. We're not going back to school. We're just going back to work on Monday. But for everybody else that either has kids or is a kid, it's time for back to school. And we wanted to talk about, a few of the movies that, capture that spirit of getting excited for school. So we went ahead and decided that with this list, we wanted the movies to be about 50% ish, half of the movie taking place at school. So we're excluding things like, say, Superbad, where yes, the first maybe quarter of the movie takes place at school, but really it's not a movie about school. It's just where they get their adventure started. We want movies that take, or for instance, like Ferris Bueller. Yes, there's some scenes in a school, but it doesn't really take place at school. It's about a ditching.
It's actually
school.
Being out of school. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we're going to exclude some of those movies in favor of movies that actually take place either in the classroom or physically at the school. And then we're also going to look at movies K through 12. So we're going to exclude college from this list just to pare the list down a little bit. So
fair enough. All right.
I'll throw it over to you. Go ahead and jump into your list. Let us know what you're thinking. What gets you, excited for school? Because I heard you booing earlier.
No, I mean, I unlike you, I was never super excited to be going back to school, especially as a kid.
Yeah, I liked it.
No. Well, all right. So I know you love this first movie that I'm going to list. It has become a cult classic. It was originally released in 2004, and that is Napoleon Dynamite.
Ooh, good pick.
Written and directed by Jared Hiss. Now, Napoleon Dynamite is not necessarily a movie about going back to school, but it deals with a lot of the back to school challenges that you're going to face. Making friends with a new student,
Pedro,
going to a pep rally and having to dance your ass off.
Amazing dance. I mean, that's just fantastic. And isn't he wearing the boots? He's got the boots on.
Yeah, and obviously this movie has some very iconic moments, and I just think it's a great look at high school if you live in the middle of nowhere. Because
if you were in high school when this came out, everybody was quoting that. It's a very quotable movie. Coach, and do you fat lard, and you always want to watch me throw this pigskin over the mountains.
Yeah, right. It's got some great lines,
and I haven't even seen it in a long time. And I remember those lines. This is crazy. Vote for Pedro.
Next one. 1987's, directed by Carl Reiner, Summer School. Have you ever seen this one?
No, that one I have not seen. So that I might have to add that to my list to go check out.
I think it's funny. It's about a gym teacher who, in order to get tenure, is forced to teach a summer school class. And so it is a story about people going back to school for the summer and a teacher going back to school for the summer. And he doesn't want to be there. The kids don't want to be there. He's teaching a subject he has no interest or knowledge of. It's a great kind of 80s comedy. And it is very much in the style of 80s comedy. So if you love those old movies, you'll totally enjoy it.
I do. So I'm going to watch that one.
Yeah.
Probably now because it's the time.
Yeah. Obviously I had to put this on my list because I can't just think about school without getting John Hughes on. So 1985, The Breakfast Club. Now, this is them going to back to school for Saturday detention, but it's just a great school movie, and it's so quintessential John Hughes. And if you've ever listened to the show, you know we love John Hughes.
Yeah, well, we do have a total rewind episode on this movie on Breakfast Club, so you can always scroll back in the feed and find that, and go watch it and listen to the episode.
Now, my number 2, this is not something I saw until a couple years ago, actually. And it is directed by Thor Frudential. It's from 2010, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And
okay.
What I think is so great about this is a movie about a kid starting his first day of middle school. And we all remember that horrific transition of going from elementary school to middle school. And
it's like a different world.
Yeah, and it captures that experience so well.
That is an excellent pick. I love that.
And number 1, I mean, this is just, in my opinion, one of the greatest movies ever made. Directed by Mark Waters, written by Tina Fey.
What could it be?
2004, Mean Girls. What better captures high school than this movie?
I actually agree with you. It's fantastic. I mean, a true fish out of water story where you have her coming from, where's she coming from? Australia?
Africa.
And yeah, she's a fish out of water. So straight up has to learn all of the dynamics of high school, all on display while she's also going through her own, crush and hormones and all that. And it is just a thrill to watch. It's hilarious. And I think probably the career defining performance from Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah. And on top of it, it's incredibly quotable. Still to this day, we hear people saying fetch and things like that just because of this one movie.
Yeah. And the irony is, fetch wasn't happening. And
it's not going to happen.
So yeah, the great pick. That might be the overall number 1 here, CP. That's just, if you're going back to school, that's probably the movie you should put on.
Fair enough.
Great movie.
What are your thoughts?
All right. So number 5 on my list, we're going all the way back down to the K in K through 12. And that is Kindergarten Cop, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's a good one.
This is a great movie. It is not necessarily a plot movie about school per se. He's undercover as a kindergarten teacher while he's trying to catch a bad guy. And the fun part is just the interaction between him and the kids and the relationship that they form over the course of the movie. But it is, a movie that encapsulates that age group, kindergarten, and really plays to that humor and just... It's such a lovable movie. It's so much fun and also quotable. So it holds up well too, because there's not a bunch of like CGI or crazy, like it holds up in a weird way. Yeah. I mean, it's a movie of its time, sure. But I mean, you can watch it today and it doesn't feel like you couldn't enjoy it.
Yeah, no, that's a good pick there.
It also was a little bit of an inversion on Arnold's image at that time, which was, I think Vin Diesel or The Rock, one of them did like Daddy Daycare, and they kind of said that was following in the footsteps of Arnold, where he was like this great action hero. He killed a lot of people in every movie, and then he's like a kindergarten teacher,
Oh, you're thinking of when Vin Diesel did The Pacifier.
Is that what it is? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, I think I don't know what I'm talking about. And number 4 on my list, CP, you're gonna love it. I actually think you're really gonna like my list, except for number 1, and we'll get there. But number 4 on my list is Sky High.
Oh, dude, I love Sky High. That's one of my favorite Disney movies.
So if you haven't seen it, it's basically a superhero school. And literally there is a kid who he's part of a superhero family that hasn't developed his powers yet. And he has to go to superhero school. And it's called Sky High because it's literally a high school that floats in the clouds. And the only way to get there is to have a superpower that allows you to fly or to take the flying bus, which sure, but we got superheroes. So it could be anything. And it ends up being like a really fun story where the superheroes have a history between them, but they're literally going to class and learning different things, and it's definitely it literally has a first day back to school in it, and It was a lot of fun. It's a real sleeper to me, CP. This movie did not take off in its time, and I don't know. I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't know if it's a movie that kids today watch, or for that matter, if the effects aged well. But I remember really liking the spirit of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think what's amazing about Sky High is it could have fallen into that trap of being like a Disney Channel original movie. It has the same kind of coming of age feel. It has the same sentiment, but it somehow avoids it. And I don't know how they managed to walk that line.
It's a good point. Yes. Number 3 on my list, CP. This one was tough. And so I kind of have 2 here because I couldn't pick. They're both great. And that is Clueless and Billy Madison.
Ooh.
Both 90s movies.
Mm-hmm.
Both capture that time. I think Clueless, really captures the sort of exaggerated Valley girl. It's not necessarily your typical high school experience for anybody because she lives in, a rich, Valley girl area, but it does capture the spirit of the 90s and what it was like to be in high school around that time. So I thought that was definitely a fun pick, but CP, I gotta go Billy Madison, right? Like that's just a classic back to school movie. And if you haven't seen it, it's one of Adam Sandler's classics and also one of his first features.
Yeah.
Which it works really well. It's essentially there's this guy, Billy Madison, who's the son of this CEO corporate company owner. And essentially he wants to retire and hand his company down to his son, but he's an idiot. He's Billy Madison. He's Adam Sandler, the college idiot. And essentially, in order to prove to his dad that he is worthy to take over the company, he has to go back to school and complete, I think it's grades 1 through 12. I don't know if he goes to kindergarten.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and he has to complete like each grade within like either a week or I think it's a week.
Yeah.
And if he can do that and pass all the tests and get all the way to the end, then his dad will leave him his company. And so it ends up being a really great movie. And it even has CP, the back to school song, where he's waiting outside for the bus and he's like, back to school, back to school. It's all there. And this movie is just hilarious. It's that original brand of Adam Sandler humor, Happy Gilmore, Big Daddy, Wedding Singer, all that type stuff, and it just works really, really well.
Dude, that's a good choice. If you're thinking about going back to school, you should definitely watch Billy Madison. So good call on that.
Number 2 for me is it's a little bit different, but I also found this movie very entertaining. School of Rock. So I don't know if you remember that one with Jack Black, where
I've not seen it in a while.
Yeah, he basically comes and takes over an open position at a high school music class, and he is going to teach a group of students to perform at a rock show. And the movie itself doesn't necessarily follow all the aspects of school, but it follows one class specifically. But it's very entertaining. It's very funny. I think it has good heart, and it's a movie that holds up really well.
Good point.
Now, CP, this is where my list is going to lose you, I think.
All right.
I really do think. All right. Number 1 is going to be Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
No, it's a wizard school.
But yes, it is maybe one of the best schools of all time, Hogwarts. And really any of the Harry Potter movies, they all take place at Hogwarts and they all deal with what school life is like for that age group. Now, this isn't K through 12. This is 1 through 7. A little bit different here, but if you go to Sorcerer's Stone, that scene where Harry Potter does get his letter and he gets accepted into Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and then he shows up and they take the boats, and it's just like the coolest back to school, and like it's the dream of what you would want school to be like. You're gonna go learn magic. It's like amazing.
Oh man.
And they have all the houses and you get sorted, and it's just so fun. Like I remember like looking at my own school experience and being like, God, this sucks. Like, I wish I could go to Hogwarts. So awesome. Well, let me ask you, because I brought this up twice now. My list, does Harry Potter throw it off at 1?
Yeah. I get it. It is about going to school. And I think that in my mind, back to school movies are movies about going back to real schools that we can all go to.
Well,
So,
I think
I guess Sky High
Hogwarts
violates that too, then, because we're not going to a superhero school either. So, I guess if
Hogwarts
we're
is
going
the
to allow
dream,
one,
man.
we got to allow the other. So, okay. Well, audience, what do you think? What back to school movies did we miss?
Oh yeah, I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are because there are way more than this. I was looking up different movies and stuff, and this is just the list of movies that I liked. There's a lot. So this is a great list because it's not like, oh, rank, the Ninja Turtle. There's 7. You're like, it's really a matter of how you rank them. But no, there's tons of movies here, so I'm sure we missed some. So audience, let us know. Now, CP, that does it for our episode this week. So I just wanted to say to everybody tuning in, thank you so much for listening, and be sure to continue the conversations on all of the topics this week. As we mentioned in the shout outs, we love hearing from you guys, talking with you, and in CP's instance, maybe even debating with you. So fantastic, CP. I love it. And you can follow me at Big Kid D-Man. You can follow the show at filmmakerscompass.com, where we have all of our social media listed, as well as a feed of all of the episodes. Like we mentioned, there were some that you might even be able to scroll back to for relevant conversation for this one. Yay. Looking at you, Breakfast Club. So, CP, take us away.
You can follow me at NDCal5. Thanks for hanging out and talking movies with us this week. You can see us back here next week, unless we mess up with the audio again. But until then, keep watching movies.